If we really want to have a renaissance here in the West, then it is essential that we tackle the problem of racial tensions, particularly here in America. As I was going through my bookshelves, which I often do, maybe once a month or once every couple months, in order to get rid of old books to get new ones, I came across this book, Race Matters by Cornel West. And I was actually going to get rid of it, but before I got rid of it, I wanted to flip through the pages just to see if it was still interesting, because I hadn't read it for a few years, and frankly, I didn't remember much of it. But I did find that he had a few interesting ideas within this book, and it's actually a collection of essays, I should add, which I will mention in the rest of the video. But basically, this book has ideas that I don't hear often talked about today, even though we constantly hear about racism or tension between the races. So maybe there's a few good ideas here that we can use to make a little bit better of a world. So please enjoy this video. Let's begin. If you aren't familiar with Cornel West, he is currently the Green Party candidate for president at the time of writing this essay. He is known for his diversity of knowledge, searing wit, and deep compassion for mankind. He identifies as both a Christian and a socialist, which scares both the left and the right. The 1992 riots sparked something in him which encouraged him to write many of the essays in this book. He said, quote, "What we witnessed in Los Angeles was the consequence of a lethal linkage of economic decline, cultural decay, and political lethargy in American life. Race was the visible catalyst, not the underlying cause." End quote. He believes that neither the Democrats nor the Republicans seem to have a good answer for the race problems in America, stating, quote, "The liberal notion that more government programs can solve racial problems is simplistic precisely because it focuses solely on the economic dimension, and the conservative idea that what is needed is a change in the moral behavior of poor black urban dwellers, especially poor black men, who they say should stay married, support their children, and stop committing so much crime, highlights immoral actions while ignoring public responsibility for the immoral circumstance that haunt the fellow citizens." End quote. Basically, liberals want to integrate blacks into white society, and conservatives want blacks to be deserving of toleration. Both of these positions fail. He says, quote, "This debate must go far beyond the liberal and conservative positions in three fundamental ways. First, we must acknowledge that structures and behavior are inseparable, that institutions and values go hand in hand. How people act and live are shaped, though in no way dictated or determined by, the larger circumstance in which they find themselves. These circumstances can be changed, their limits attenuated, by positive actions to elevate living conditions. Second, we should reject the idea that structures are primarily economic and political creatures, an idea that sees culture as an ephemeral set of behavioral attitudes and values. Culture is as much a structure as the economy or politics. It is rooted in institutions such as families, schools, churches, synagogues, mosques, and communication industries, television, radio, video, music. Similarly, the economy and politics are not only influenced by values, but also promote particularly cultural ideas of the good life and good society. Third, and most important, we must delve into the depths where neither liberals or conservatives dare to tread, namely into murky waters of despair and dread that now flood the streets of Black America. To talk about the depressing statistics of unemployment, infant mortality, incarceration, teenage pregnancy, and violent crime is one thing, but to face up to the momentary eclipse of hope, the unprecedented collapse of meaning, the incredible disregard for human, especially Black, life and property in much of Black America is something else." End quote. Blacks have faced historical oppression, but whites are also experiencing significant hardship. Real wages have been declining since the 1970s, and we have become a culture of pleasure, property, and power. It is no wonder that a culture like this would be filled with sexual crimes and nihilism. He says, quote, "Nihilism is to be understood here not as a philosophical doctrine, that there are no rational grounds for legitimate standards or authority. It is far more the lived experience of coping with a life of horrifying meaninglessness, hopelessness, and most important, lovelessness." End quote. When a culture attacks black intelligence, ability, beauty, and character, you cannot expect them to love themselves. Cornel believes that the black community needs a prophetic figure now more than ever, saying, quote, "This new framework should be a prophetic one of moral reasoning with its fundamental ideas of a mature black identity, coalition strategy, and a black cultural democracy," end quote, and that a, quote, "prophetic framework encourages moral assessment of the variety of perspectives held by black people and selects those views based on black dignity and decency that eschew putting any group of people or culture on a pedestal or in the gutter," end quote. He adds that, quote, "A prophetic framework replaces black cultural conservatism with black cultural democracy. Instead of authoritarian sensibilities that subordinate women or degrade gay men and lesbians, black cultural democracy promotes the quality of black women and men and the humanity of black gay men and lesbians. In short, black cultural democracy rejects the pervasive patriarchy and homophobia in black American life," end quote. He goes on to discuss more about the current black leadership, saying, quote, "Present-day black political leaders can be grouped under three types: race-effacing managerial leaders, race-identifying protest leaders, and race-transcending prophetic leaders," end quote. The first type is growing in popularity with whites and blacks, and usually is designated as the lesser of two evils. The second pretends to come from the radical tradition of Malcolm X, but are self-deluded. Basically, this is who the white elite appease to look good for the black movements, ignoring the black poor. We currently have no race-transcending prophetic leaders. He then lists two reasons that black intellectual work has suffered greatly. Quote, "First, the academic system of rewards and status, prestige and influence puts a premium on those few black scholars who imitate the dominant paradigms elevated by fashionable Northwestern Seaboard institutions of higher learning. Second, many black scholars who deliberately distance themselves from the mainstream academy have little to sustain them as scholars," end quote. He ends by discussing things like black sexuality and the tensions between blacks and Jews, because Jews are often seen as the oppressed that succeeded, and blacks as the oppressed who have yet to succeed. I will leave this essay here, and I hope that it is at least something new for you to think about. This work certainly isn't sufficient to completely solve racial tensions, but with a better understanding of the realities of our world, perhaps there can be a path forward. Thanks.